Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Movies change a lot from their initial screenplay to what actually is filmed. Personally, I love hearing about earlier drafts and things that they decided to change. It's especially fascinating to hear about the original versions of something that has such a huge pop culture impact, like Star Wars. Now, as I've said before, I'm more of a Star Trek guy, and I've pointed out the silliness of Star Wars before. But as I also have said, and people seem to ignore, is that all the things we love are silly. From a certain point of view, that is. But sometimes even the goofiness of the things we love used to be even more goofy. Writer and editor J.W. Rinsler, while looking through the Lucasfilm archives for material to put in Star Wars production and nonfiction books, came across the original rough draft for The Star Wars and thought that it would be great to adapt it to comics. And that's what we're reviewing today. Star Wars, when it was initially conceived, was only as one film. While everything here says that it's George Lucas's original rough draft, it'd probably be more accurate to say that it's the third or fourth draft. Star Wars' most original concept was apparently a short summary called The Journal of the Whills that featured that legendary of all Jedi, Mace Windu. No doubt with famed actor Samuel L. Jackson in the role. As the drafts expanded, more Star Wars-y elements were added, and the title changed to The Adventures of Luke Starkiller, as taken from the Journal of the Whills, Saga 1, The Star Wars. And from there, it became The Incredibly Strange Creatures Who Stopped Living and Learned How to Make a Damn Proper Title for Their Story, as taken from the Journal of the Whills. Yeah, naturally that just got shortened to The Star Wars. On the artistic front, it was decided that it would be best if instead of the designs that were actually used in the film, they'd go back to the very original production design ideas for stuff like how stormtroopers looked, ship design, and etc. Which is really kind of brilliant. It really does create a sense of an alternate reality, something that's so close to what you're familiar with, but different enough that it feels new. At the same time, place and character names that got cut from the finished version of A New Hope got recycled in later films and stories, so you end up seeing things that are a bit different in the original version. So let's dig into The Star Wars #1 and see if the original version of this tale from a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away really should have stayed there.
Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. Brodsky, you're not the smartest. Life out, you're not an artist. Anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn. Linkara, he's a man punch, wears a party hat. Linkara, he has a magic gun. Where'd he purchase that? Linkara, coins, robots, Amazon and trucks. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara.
Not really much point in looking at the individual covers, since 1, they're all awesome, done in a Struzan-esque style by Nick Runge, and mimic the general style of Star Wars posters, and 2, I'm reading from a trade. This may not be the Star Wars everyone knows, but it's still Star Wars, so we begin with an expository crawl. Until the recent Great Rebellion,
The Great Rebellion.
the Jedi Bendu were the most feared warriors in the universe, despite the fact they were called Jedi Bendu. Want to make your fearsome organization sound silly right off the bat? Add more syllables to their name. For 100,000 years, generations of Jedi perfected their art as the personal bodyguards of the Emperor, and every year they were discouraged from unionizing. They were the chief architects of the invincible Imperial Space Force, which expanded the Empire across the galaxy. from the celestial equator to the farthest reaches of the Great Rift, and yet they had the crappiest postal system in the universe. Now, these legendary warriors are all but extinct. Damn, I knew we shouldn't have cut down Endor's forests. That's the Jedi Bendu's natural habitat. One by one, they have been hunted down and destroyed as enemies of the New Empire by a ferocious and sinister rival warrior sect, the Knights of Sith. Don't you mean Sith Godo or something? While a spaceship flies into view, as you do in Star Wars, we cut to the fourth moon of Utapau. There, a family is living in a fairly desolate environment in what appears to be a crashed spaceship and some makeshift shelters. A boy runs inside and informs his father that they've found us. However, the father is too busy whipping his son with his belt. I'm not even kidding, look at this. And tells said son, Deke, to continue concentrating on the problem. The problem seems to be a Rubik's Cube. And Jedi training is hard. Anakin, how many? Yep, the older son is named Anakin. And yet, strangely, he's still on a planet with lots of sand. Only one this time, Dad. A Banta 4. Good. They must think this night is something special. We may not have to repair that old bucket after all. Prepare yourself. Let's open up the sweet corn stand and make us some money. Deke also wants to join in, revealing the Rubik's Cube is now glowing. The dad asks if Deke has solved the problem. I think it's the Corbett dictum. Ah yes, the wisdom of Bill Corbett. Made my dog watch Scooby-Doo to shame into some focus with his life. When are you gonna solve a mystery? He licked himself in response. There is truth with these Jedi bendy dolls. What is without. Okay, that sounds kind of deep, assuming I'm interpreting this correctly. That reality is all that's outside of our bodies, but doesn't that kind of defeat the purpose of meditation and contemplating and thinking and stuff, since none of that is occurring outside the body? Sir, I've outmarked Anakin in 12 disciplines. I'm as good. All right, son, get your gear. Yippee! Are we sure Anakin and Deke weren't accidentally given the wrong names? He even looks like Anakin from The Phantom Menace. Anyway, the three head out and see that the ship from the expository crawl page has landed. The father suspects that the ship landed there to set a trap for them since there's no sign of him actually leaving his ship. He decides to confront the pilot head-on and goes off on his own, figuring it's better to go in rather than wait for their opponent to set up an ambush. Or you could use that gun the kid is carrying to shoot at them from a distance. You know, the reason why guns exist in the first place? To hit a target from far away? It's a moot point anyway, since the owner of the ship had indeed left it and snuck around back to the kids. The Sith slices at Deke and knocks him away. Surprising that that's all it does, considering what we've seen lightsabers do in the movies. But even more surprisingly, we see that Anakin is wielding a red lightsaber of his own. I'm sure there's some obscure reason why Sith only use red lightsabers in the proper continuity while the Jedi get all the other colors, but it seems kind of goofy to me. You'd think the people embracing emotion and passion would be the ones to have an entire rainbow of colors at their disposal. The Sith has his standard issue evil mask that even has tusks coming out of the mouth. They're not there for intimidation value, the Sith just like having a convenient beer bottle opener. Anakin fends off the Sith long enough for the father to return and, well, pull a Darth Maul on this guy. It's not surprising really, it's not as if the Sith had a leg to stand on. What? The dad is naturally saddened upon seeing the Deke dead, the dead Deke, and while the artwork by Mike Mayhew is excellent in conveying both action and emotion, sometimes the somewhat photorealistic faces make me scratch my head. Like here, where it looks like the father is about to, well...
What I'm about to say might sound strange, but I think we should eat this corpse.
And then there's Anakin's expression here, which seems less sad and more pouting, which I suppose would make him match his namesake. They burn Deke's body and take the Sith ship. Son, pilot a course for Aquilay. We're going home? We both need a rest. We both need a vacation. Set a course for the Atlantic City planet. We cut to Alderaan, the capital of the new galactic empire, where a group of Star Destroyers are flying over the plaza of the Daters. Daughters? And yes, those are indeed Star Destroyers flying low over a plaza. Alright boys, let's impress our Emperor! Superiors, break left and roll! Actually, Star Destroyers were originally fighter craft. I do wonder about the aerodynamics of that. It's essentially a big metal paper airplane, or flying Doritos. Anyway, while they strafe the assembled at the plaza, the Emperor is preparing to give a big speech. The Emperor in this version is this Sinestro-looking dude, which I suppose makes more sense. I've never understood how the Emperor in Star Wars got away with spending all his time in black robes and cloaks and capes all day. He really made speeches and attended political dinners and stuff in a hood? Dude made an appearance at Get Out the Vote dressing like he was a wizard at a Renaissance fair? Anyway, the speech is about their new campaign. We must conquer the Aquileian systems, last refuge of the outlawed and vile sect of the Jedi. Boo! You're not funny! Bring out Figrin Dawn and the modal nodes! I have personally asked the Aquileians to accept the Treaty of Alliance. During the long period of negotiation, they have decided only to be undecided.
I hate these filthy neutrals, Kif. With enemies, you know where they stand, but with neutrals, who knows?
As everyone celebrates the announcement of the annexing of the territory, including proto-stormtroopers in the crowd that actually resemble some alternate Halo armor, one person walks away and we soon find him at a bar. His name is Whitsun, which I'm sure is supposed to be pronounced White Sun, because poor literacy is the will of the Force. And before anyone says it's just a matter of stylizing it, bear in mind that this universe features people named Skywalker and Starkiller. You don't need to stylize things after that. Anyway, Whitsun is going up to the fur-coated guy named Bail Antilles. And while I should be focused on their conversation, I'm just sort of curious what sort of classy bar has a lounge sofa like that where you can apparently sunbathe. Anyway, Antilles tells Whitsun that the Empire has grounded all spacecraft, so his trade frigates aren't going anywhere. Whitsun realizes that the Empire isn't waiting for this alliance treaty to be done with before they make their move against the Aquileians, which I thought was the entire point of the Emperor's speech a second ago. However, before they can talk anymore, Antilles is arrested, as are all other Trade Guild officers. Before he's taken off, Antilles recommends Whitsun go ask a pirate for help. Ooh, there's a thought. Anyone ever tried to make a lightsaber hook hand? We cut over to Darth Vader. Behold Darth Vader. No mask, but similar fashion stylings, plus red eyes. He's in a room with Governor Hodak. Who dat? Hodak. Who has been put in charge of the Aquileian region for when the Empire conquers it. He wants Vader to lighten up a bit, but someone else in the room objects. No, dear God! It's the Absorb-a-Lot from Love and Monsters! Lucas, we're sorry about not accepting Jar Jar Binks. We will take him over Love and Monsters! Good lord, you sapient lump of mashed potatoes! Put on some pants! Well, I'm hurling insults at the guy, but he's not actually that annoying or anything. He just reminds me of awful, awful television. Anyway, the governor is celebrating the coming conquest and how much power it will gain them, but the talking pile of lard says he shouldn't be so confident. Don't underestimate the armies of Aquileia. They are led by a Jedi. And you know them, their stats are always far too up. Someone should really nerf them. Darth Vader doesn't believe the Jedi still exist. General, I've told you about our Supreme Tribunal member, Vantos Call. He worries a lot about legends and myths. I mean, he actually believes in the Helix fossil. Weirdo. General Skywalker is no myth. When I first arrived at court, he was first bodyguard to the Emperor. It was he who led the Jedi Rebellion. Sieg Darklighter led the rebellion. So the Emperor would have you believe, but I was there. I was there, Lord Vader. I was there when the courage of Jedi failed. He's there, all right. I can sense it. Mark my words, Aquileia will not easily be conquered. Is it just me, or has this dialogue been reversed? Shouldn't Vader be the one who can sense a presence and believe an old enemy is still alive, and the overweight bureaucrat be the one disbelieving of anything? We cut to Aquileia itself, where we are naturally greeted by the most important part of Star Wars mythology, trade negotiations. I kid, actually. It is about that, but in this case, it's political and economic stuff relating to the coming war. The king of Aqualay, Chaos, is hoping to get trade support from large companies to economically support them if war breaks out. But the Chrome companies fear imperial trade restrictions. No more Chrome? How will Google survive? One guy demands that the king just sign the damn treaty, and that General Skywalker has no chance of mounting any resistance against the Empire. However, Skywalker himself walks in, and he's actually kind of badass looking. His uniform resembles the Star Trek uniforms from Wrath of Khan and whatnot, just white and with a cape. I want this outfit! And now you understand my fashion choice for this episode. Plus, in Star Wars, everybody wears capes. He says they have to make a decision about this. General Skywalker, war is a serious business. A deadly business. It is? Since when? Senator Nash, procrastination... Wait, Senator Nash?
Yes, Linkara, it is I, Imperial Senator Nash.
When the hell did this happen?
Tuesday. I decided it was time for a change in profession. This way, I will be in a galaxy far, far away from Florida.
So now you work for the Empire. And the dark side of the Force.
Indeed, young critic. And now, you will die. Oh, Jesus! Ow! God!
You okay?
I feel like a rainbow.
Have you approved my defense measures, Tarkin? My sacerdotal colleagues and I believe an actual war with the Empire is still only a remote possibility. Sacerdotal? Yeah, here's your vocabulary lesson for the day. Relating to priests or the priesthood. So Grand Moff Tarkin in this version is the Reverend High Defense Secretary? On the plus side, if he's still played by Peter Cushing in this, that means he's overly qualified to fight Dracula. I'm really curious how they decided to change all the names around for the final version of the film. Did they take all the names from the original script and put them in a hat, and each actor picked out what they were actually going to become? The king says he'll make a final decision on the treaty soon enough, but suddenly his two kids, Biggs and Windy, seriously? Before becoming a king, were you the weatherman? Run inside and inform him that his other daughter, Leia, is leaving and they need to say goodbye to her. And indeed, we cut to the farewell of Princess Leia, who's still sporting the bun hair in this version. She's going off to college, which probably explains how a princess suddenly hooks up with a rebellion, and everyone wishes her well. The semester will be over before you know it. You'll have a grand time, Leia. There are so many new things to learn, like those new holographic cell phones. How do you kids keep up with all this technology these days? I wish I were going, but my entire fraternity was expelled after we turned that astromech droid into a beer keg. May the force of others be with you all. When you say it like that, doesn't that just mean may you possess other people's guns? We cut to the Aqualay war room, where General Skywalker is trying to figure out if the Empire is going to attack soon. I don't know. It doesn't feel good. I've got a feeling about this, but I don't know if it's a bad one yet. Anakin and his father suddenly storm into the war room, where we see that the Aqualayan guards are pretty crappy against their masterful tactic of shoving them. However, we finally get a name for our Jedi friend, Kane Starkiller. Turns out Starkiller and Skywalker are old pals, and Kane had been assumed dead. Anakin, in the meantime, seems to have his eyes set on a redhead that he no doubt hopes to show his lightsaber to later. They head to a meeting room to talk privately, discussing how the Empire has been chasing them halfway across the universe. Kane wants Luke Skywalker, and yes, the one who looks like Obi-Wan is in fact Luke Skywalker, to train Anakin as his Padawan. Luke wonders why Kane doesn't just finish the training himself, since he was always a superior Jedi. I'm too old, Luke. I can't go on. You must finish it. But I'm old too. Look at how white my hair and beard are. For crying out loud, Luke, you bleached your hair for a cosplay and didn't realize the material was permanent. What kind of talk is this? That's not the Starkiller I remember. I'm not the same Starkiller! I'm much more restrained and composed! However, punching his arm in the glass table has caused it to, explode. Kane tears off part of his shirt to reveal that he is, in fact, a cyborg. There is nothing left of me but my head and right arm. Well, that's okay. That just means you're the remake RoboCop. You can still train him. Wait a second. A cybernetic knight in space with most of his organic material removed while having to fight a group of evil space wizards? Holy crap! George Lucas created Rom's Space Knight! Actually, it's pretty clear from this revelation that Kane can't train him anymore. I mean, for crying out loud, just hitting a glass table caused his arm to explode. That's not a good sign for your cyborg. Kane reveals that he's dying and he keeps losing control, hence his little outburst there. But yeah, because of this, he's in no shape to train Anakin to become a Jedi Bendy Straw. The Jedi Bendu must survive. We must pass it on. Only a Jedi can stop the Empire. There is literally nothing else that could bring down the Empire. And so our comic ends with a guy running inside to inform Luke Skywalker that something big is approaching the planet, like an asteroid or solid comet. That's no solid comet. Doesn't really have the same ring to it, does it? This comic is actually pretty good. Obviously, there are still 7 more issues where I could be disappointed, and we most definitely will be coming back to this later in the year, but for now, it's got my attention. The artwork is expressive, and I love painted styles, especially when they're as detailed as this. The writing's not too bad either. I actually love the emotional reaction Kane had and the revelation of his cyborg nature. It's genuinely heartbreaking, though I would have preferred that if they were going to kill off a child so early in the story that it would have had more of an impact on him and Anakin. Hell, when you're one-upped on the importance of a child death to the story by Face Off of all things, there's something wrong. That being said, I am of course curious how much of this would have actually made it to screen had this script been used. Right now, there's a lot of little bits of plot, but very little character revealed. However, it is still the first issue, and it does a decent job of putting us into the story, though I admit that may be that because we have the experience of so much Star Wars already, we're familiar enough with the material that it makes it easier to ease into. Next week, we go from the beginning of one series to the end of another, with Batman Jazz. Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. If the opening text crawl didn't spell it out, today we're digging into issue 2 of The Star Wars, where silly names abound, Kane Starkiller is a cyborg, and Darth Vader is just a dude with scars on his face. We open where we left off last time. Aqualay apparently under attack, and our heroes in the war room. Are you sure it's not a battalion? It's a solid object, big as our third moon! That's no Aqualayan third moon, just doesn't have the same ring to it. They don't think it's a station because it's so huge, but it's also too slow to be a comet. Luke goes to inform the king of what's up, telling Anakin to stick close so he can do the training. And Anakin's face and body language do not imply that he's all that enthusiastic about this. Ah, the joys of semi-realistic. See, I don't just pick on horrible 90s artwork, I pick on even good artwork. Do the Anakin! May the force of others be with you, son. I mean, let's face it, you're pretty bad at the whole laser sword thing. Just hope that other people's force is better than yours. Luke meets with the royal parents, who are watching the double sunset of Tatuquile. And Anakin is apparently in the middle of his skiing exercises. The king asks if Kane will be joining them for dinner. He left for the spaceport at Gordon to visit an old friend, Han Solo, the Euralian. Isn't that the guy who works with a grizzly bear? At dinner, Luke talks about how one of his agents has disappeared and that there's unusual military traffic going on, so he wants approval to start mustering his forces for war. However, the king says he needs to do this legally with the approval of the full assembly, which I guess is the Senate or something on Aquile. And then Anakin interrupts to inform us, with a mouthful of space chicken, the general has taken me as Padawan learner. I'm starting to understand why Luke became the main character in later drafts. The dinner itself is interrupted by an officer informing Luke that the asteroid, or whatever it was, has disappeared. We shouldn't be that surprised. A ship that size can have a cloaking device. Speaking of, is there any explanation why the Death Star is called a space station, despite not being, stationary? Ugh, this is gonna be like the whole why only red lightsabers thing in the comments, isn't it? Whatever, only losers care about this kind of minutia. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have more important things to do, like cataloging every single time the number 47 appears in Star Trek. Anywho, back in the war room, yeah, the thing has disappeared. It's not possible. Something that size can't just disappear without a trace. Check it again. That's the 10th negative, sir. I said check it again.
Check it again. Still dead. Check it again. Still dead. Check it again.
He also wonders where the hell Anakin is. And where is he? Apparently trying to kiss that redhead from last issue. And she doesn't exactly look happy that he's trying to do so. Our hero, everybody, a potential sexual predator. However, Luke calling out for Anakin gets him to jump forward to attention. Luke is really not that supportive of sexual harassment, so he pulls a lightsaber on Anakin and swings it at him. Anakin manages to get his up in time to block. Enough! Enough what? All you did was swing at him. You are well trained, but remember, a Jedi must be single-minded. A discipline your father obviously never learned, hence your existence. Keep your lightsaber either in your pants or in your hands. And yes, I mean that both ways. Anakin has some questions, but once again, everything is interrupted. This time by the arrival of Captain Whitson, the guy from last time who was looking for info at a cantina. He's on Aquile now, but he's injured and suffering from exhaustion. With his last few breaths before going unconscious, he warns Luke that the Imperial Star Forces are not far behind and that they have a giant space fortress. With that knowledge, Luke realizes that they'll be here before sunrise and gives orders to Anakin, probably to get him out of his hair. Take the fastest land speeder to Chathos, pick up Princess Leia, and only Princess Leia. We've already got a lot of characters in this thing, and we don't need anyone more extraneous. Return by way of the Great Reef. Most speed. Most get tickets for speeding, too. While Luke tries to contact the king, they must have finished up dinner quick since now he's on his way to the assembly, to get the codes needed to activate the war computers. Luke has already arrived at Leia's place to get her. He tells her to forget about her stuff, but she refuses to leave without them or her handmaiden. Acting superior, not unreasonably so, as this random dude just suddenly showed up and told her to go with him, she starts lightly hitting his back and demanding the handmaiden come. And he punches her. Anakin being a dick to his love interest. Interesting to see what did carry over into the movies. Luke is able to get in touch with the king and get the codes. The king himself orders his entourage to turn their cars around and fly back to the capital. We also see some, hillbillies. I'm not even kidding. Strange, there's a morning star where there ain't no morning star. That's weird, sighting usually comes later than this. But said star turns out to be a blast that hits the king's entourage. Looks like we're gonna have ourselves a war, Dad! Time to get our blasters and sound the alarm! The Space South shall rise again! Appropriate for the Morningstar remark, Aquile launches Devil Squadron, a group of fighters that I guess are the X-Wing equivalents here. It's an interesting design, more resembling actual planes, but still retaining a bit of an X shape with the rear wings. Unfortunately, Devil Squadron is apparently the only squad on its way out, seeing as the Death Star has launched several bombardments on spaceports. You'd think with an entire planet that they'd have spaceports all over the place and, on the other side of it too, but no, only these 6 fighters were missed. After some technobabble about their gyros and their defense strategy, we get a good look at this version of the Death Star. Instead of the smoother looking version from the final film, this one has all sorts of greeble on it. I think it actually looks more menacing this way, especially with multiple beams firing out of it. Kinda reminds me of a Borg ship. Very cool. Surprisingly, we see the fighters actually do some damage to it as a section of the thing is breached, and we see officers being blown out into space. See? It's so bad it even pulls the text from this word balloon up. However, they are still 6 tiny ships firing at a giant space fortress, so casualties are soon taken. Devil 4 is shot and collides into a tower on its surface. Man, this is a really short miniseries, seeing as we're having the final battle against the Death Star this soon. Darth Vader hasn't had a chance to choke anybody yet. We cut to the inside of the Death Star and meet up with, surprisingly, R2-D2 and C-3PO. R2 is largely unchanged in design aside from an all-gray or white color scheme, plus a little coaster on his head and tiny little arms. Look at how small those things are. I guess the inspiration for him was a T-Rex. 3PO's design, however, is more obviously inspired by Fritz Lang's Metropolis. More interesting than that, though, R2-D2 doesn't speak in beeps. I admit I'm not entirely sure how to handle this. What sort of voice to give him for this recap? In keeping with the idea that R2-D2 is actually a salty, foul-mouthed droid if we could understand him, I think I'm gonna go for that same kind of crassness. Kind of a stereotypical New York-Brooklyn cab driver. The external bombardment appears to be concentrated in this area. The structure has exceeded the normal stress quotient by 0.4, although there is no immediate danger. And then the two get knocked to the side by an explosion. No immediate danger? You're faulty. Up yours, Goldilocks. I got a bad motivator. Outside, the attack continues. Great moves, Chewie. Chewbacca's an X-Wing pilot? Someone named Babs is hit and collides with another tower. I bet the big change in this version is that Porkins actually survives. Back to the robots. You overweight glob of grease! Can this marriage be saved? You're a mindless, useless philosopher! Ah yes, C-3PO, known for his philosophizing.
This is madness.
Truly, we are blessed with his wisdom and insight. And they spotted dude hanging upside down from the deck plate with half his face burned off, causing them to scream. Star Wars, a fun space adventure. Robots, spaceships, mutilated dead bodies hanging upside down. We cut over to Governor Hodak's command center, and given the location caption simply calls it the Space Fortress, I guess that's what it's supposed to be called. Frankly, Death Star just sounds better, so we're going with that. We have a report. All comlink power is almost out. 22 transformer sections have been destroyed. The situation is serious, but not grave on all southern levels. You know, for all the flack that the movie Death Star gets for its one weak spot, at least it took a lot of effort to get to it. This Death Star is getting its ass kicked by less than 10 fighters. Darth Vader reassures the governor not to worry about it. If it goes on too long, we'll run over budget, General Vader. These models are not cheap, you know. We already had to skim the costume budget on the stormtrooper outfits. Back in the war room on Aqualay, it's reported that the Senate has voted to end the war. Brilliant strategy, politicians! That'll put a stop to the giant killer space fortress invading you!
You magnificent bastard, I read your book!
Luke says not to worry. The Senate needs the King's approval, and he's still out of contact. Anakin and Leia are overdue as well. Back in the battle, the remaining fighters attack the Death Star's reactor, which is on the outside of the station. Man, they really did go with the lowest bidder on this thing, didn't they? 3PO says that he's getting the hell out of here in an escape pod, since if the reactor blows, they're all dead. We can't leave! It's desertion! These life pods aren't for us! And then there's a loud explosion sound. It's the end! Eject! Eject! Screw this crap! The health plan sucked anyway! And so they eject out of the Death Star as only 2 fighters remain. Vader predicts the battle is pretty much over at this point. And in this panel, he apparently put on 20 pounds. Weird. Hodak says they need to capture Leia alive. The Aquile clan has ruled this system for over 10,000 years. The people will follow no other. Fear will keep the locals in line, Governor. Fear of this battle station. Don't be too proud of this technological terror you've constructed, Lord Vader. The ability to destroy a planet is insignificant next to the power of political popularity. We have won a truly great prize for the Empire. They have a genetics treasure. Cloning! Begun. The clone saga has. Luke gets word that the King's convoy was destroyed, meaning it's likely the King is dead. He goes to speak with the Queen, since she has authority now, but the local senator enters and informs him that the Queen has already ordered them to make peace with the Empire, one that the Empire has now accepted. The guy asks Luke if he'll obey the surrender order. However, when the remaining fighters are recalled and begin retreating, the Death Star destroys them anyway. And so our comic ends with Luke declaring that if this is the peace the Empire has promised, then there's no way in hell he's gonna stop fighting. The war has just begun. This comic is okay, but I have some problems with it. A lot of my issues are, admittedly, a bit nitpicky, but there are some major ones. As I joked about, this comic has just a lot of characters, especially since we've been introduced to the droids. I actually thought they weren't going to be in this since, well, the entire purpose of 3PO and R2 in A New Hope was to get the Death Star plans to the rebels, but there's really no need for that since the Death Star is so much weaker in this version. It's implied that if the fighters kept on with their attack, they actually would destroy the thing. Anakin is given more characterization, lacking discipline, being a bit of a horn dog, and now punches royalty to get them to do what he wants. However, it's hard to call him the main character when so much of the action is focused on Luke, whose characteristics are just wise guy who wants to mobilize for war. There's nothing especially wrong, it's space opera goodness, it's not as well developed. Probably because it's a first draft and all. Also, the weird poses occasionally by the artwork. What the hell? Next time, we're back to one more Patreon-sponsored review before October, and sweet Christmas! This ought to be good. So, the symbol for Devil Squadron is a red cross? Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Opening expository crawl gave you all the info, let's dig into the Star Wars number 3. We open with everybody's favorite droids R2 and 3PO in an escape pod heading towards Aquile. It's desertion, 3PO! They'll destroy us! How could this happen? Turns out when you give R2-D2 a voice, he's kinda whiny. That's funny, the damage doesn't look as bad from out here. Okay, that line has bugged me for years because I had no idea why C-3PO said it. I mean, it's not like the ship was something he owned that he would be coming back for, and he knew the ship was taken intact because of the stormtroopers boarding it. But now we finally have proper context, and the line makes much more sense. The two were Imperial droids who were running because they thought the place was going to be destroyed, commenting on how, oh, it actually doesn't look that bad. Maybe we ran away prematurely. And that one nitpick has ruined Star Wars for me forever. Now that I have that resolution, I can start liking it now. On board the Death Star, or Space Fortress, Darth Vader is giving a speech to the stormtroopers, who seem a little overeager to get down to Aqualay, since some of them appear to be floating above the ground or have already leapt out of the hangar bay door. But hey, at least they're still in formation. That takes skill.
The war is won. Today our acts usher in a new millennium for the Empire. Things will get crappy after that millennium, but we'll all be dead, so I don't care. Today you will make the Empire complete. But first, we have some birthdays today.
Back in the Aqualayan War Room, Luke Skywalker's bluster from the end of the last issue has faded, as apparently he forgot to pay the electrical bill. All the monitors display static, and all the lights are turned off. The only other officer there reports no sign of Starkiller or the princess, and it's likely they were killed. And here's where we actually start resembling A New Hope a bit, as 3PO and R2 are now in the Dune Sea, with R2 being his usual calm, collected self.
You're nothing more than a dim-witted, emotion-brained intellectual. Why you were created is beyond my logic systems.
Poyo, what's wrong?
I just suddenly miss Sierra.
3PO, finally done with all of R2's moaning, picks up the droid and tosses him away. C-3PO may have been encouraged to become a translator in his youth, but his true passion was always football. The two separate, always a shame to see a couple arguing, and R2 comes across not Jawas in this version, but Starkiller and the princess. Where's your master? Can you speak? How do you relate your data? You're of Corollian manufacture. Are you damaged? Maybe if you actually stopped asking questions for a second, he'd answer you. But yeah, he actually stays quiet, and they decide to take him along, figuring that if he came from the enemy ship, he may have useful information in his databanks. And along the way, they come across 3PO, while the princess is suddenly pissed off at him, even though a second ago she was fine. I'll have my father cut you into pieces when we get back. I may save your eyes, though. I'll have them petrified and made into a necklace. Finished movie Leia would sooner kiss a Wookiee. Original script Leia would sooner dismember the Wookiee and turn the body parts into jewelry. They pick up 3PO, but Leia's not happy. If you're gonna stop for every unfortunate along the way, we'll never get back. To be fair, that serial killer we picked up wasn't actually an unfortunate, so I think our track record is still 3 out of 4. R2 even finally speaks up to say they should pick him up, though I'm sure it's because he wants to rub it into 3PO that he went the right way. When they seem to make a rest stop in a canyon, Anakin and Leia wander off for a while.
Maybe they were attacked. I sense danger.
I'm sensing danger. Oh, that's mildew.
In reality, the two have located the secret entrance to a bunker for the royal family. Luke is there too, and the princess demands that Starkiller be punished for his behavior, but Luke informs her of her father's death. Later, Leia is dressed up like a Final Fantasy villain and has assumed the throne. They talk about the fact that the Senate has been corrupted by the Empire, and the Queen is only a ruler by marriage, and therefore doesn't have the political clout to keep them in line. Leia is the true Queen here, and given what both her and her mother are wearing, she became the Queen of the Planet of Silly Hats. Queen Fanface says that they have to get Leia to the Ofuchi system, which is headed by the Chrome companies that we saw in the first issue. They've agreed to supply weapons and troops to help return Leia to the throne, and she and her brothers should hopefully be safe there. As for the current queen, she's staying behind to oversee the evacuation of the palace. My eye keeps getting drawn to that thing on Leia's head. And yeah, that's not a part of the throne. She is wearing that on the back of her head. We see her get up and walk around with it. Do they plan to fly her like a kite later? We will have to travel in disguise. No one can suspect wealth or royal training, and I must have full command. I fear the new queen will not stand for this. Do not put words into my mouth. I will do what is necessary. Fetch me my peasant dreamcatcher so that I might affix it to my bun. White Sun has apparently recovered from last issue, and Luke wants him to come along on their trip, also telling one of his officers to contact Han Solo at a spaceport.
Han Solo? Yes, sir.
Wow, the famed pilot of the 20th Century Fox! Darth Vader and Governor Hodak have already landed at said spaceport, talking about how they'll have the royal family in custody soon if they can trust Count Sandage. A man hungry for power can always be trusted to betray those in power. My God, what a shocking betrayal of that guy who I'm not even sure has appeared before! Luke and Anakin get their supplies ready and change into ponchos to disguise themselves. They also decide to bring the droids along, figuring their information on the space fortress could be invaluable. They can be trusted never to harm a living creature, unless one of them has a bad motivator, in which case, get the hell out of their way and hope they don't develop a taste for blood. The droids will also provide accurate information when asked, so they decide to keep their identities secret. However, before they can get underway, Aqualayan troops under the infamous Count Sandage arrive to take the princess and the queen. The Empire has assured their safety. They must stay. I don't answer to the Empire. General, you've gone too far this time. Arrest them! And Luke immediately slices Count Sandage in half. I look forward to the Count Sandage action figure with kung fu bisecting action. I wonder if in the expanded universe of this Star Wars, Sandage would have come back like Darth Maul did. Also, gotta love that civilized weapon for a more civilized age of cutting people in half. Anakin's solution is to pop the clutch and tell the guards to eat his dust. They get a good distance away and watch as the hidden base self-destructs. Fortunately, this was planned, so no one was inside at the time, just wanting to keep the Empire from finding the Queen. And we soon see the Empire arriving in force, with a combination of hovercrafts, Star Destroyers, and new huge model Star Destroyers, as opposed to just the fighters from before, and dudes on dinosaur back. You think any of them are jealous of the guys who get to ride around on the hovercraft? Hey Ron, how's the view down there? Ah, shut up, Steve. At least I get to sit down. I also just noticed the dinosaurs have feathers, so either this Star Wars has more accurate dinosaurs than Marvel, or these are actually chocobos. More surprising, though, is that the stormtroopers riding them are wielding lightsabers. Yeah, so much for being the weapon of Force users. We had to wait until that one guy in Force Awakens for a stormtrooper melee weapon. Good old TR-8R. You spin that thing, man. And yeah, I know there's backstory with his actual designation. Screw you, I like TR-8R. I have a headcanon where traitor is actually the only word he's capable of saying. We cut over to Darth Vader, who appears to be checking a Star Trek LCARS menu. I knew Darth Vader was a Trekkie this whole time. However, here's where things really get weird. See, Darth Vader was apparently originally two characters. Meet Prince Valorum, this dude in the mask and armor.
Your exploits are legendary. I have long waited to meet a Knight of the Sith. If there is any way I can assist you, my entire command is at your bidding.
You may dispense with the pleasantries, Lord Vader. I'm here to put you back on schedule.
I can assure you, Prince Valorum, my men are working as fast as they can.
Perhaps I can find new ways to motivate them.
I can assure you this invasion will be completed on time.
The Emperor does not share your optimistic appraisal of the situation. Darth Vader asks if he really believes that Skywalker is a Jedi. If he was not a Jedi, I wouldn't be here. I sense something. Something I have not felt since...
Okay, seriously, this bit is getting weirder every time we do it.
I am altering the bit. Pray I do not alter it further.
Stop that!
Back with our heroes, their vehicles are running out of fuel, so they stop at a gas station. Hopefully, the invasion won't affect prices or their ability to call for help.
No, I'm sorry, all phones from the Eagle Attack, all phones are dead up here.
Really? Damn it!
At the gas station, they look for someone to help fill it up, but unfortunately, this seems to be a self-service pump. Namely because the employees are all hanging upside down and dead. I wasn't even supposed to be here today. They realize this couldn't have happened too long ago, so they need to haul ass, grabbing a fuel rod on their way out. Poor kid. Now he's one with the force of others. Technically, the force of others is responsible for this. Perhaps you should rename your religious system to something that doesn't sound so violent. Unfortunately, the stormtroopers have already arrived. They try to bluff their way out of it, but the stormtroopers just decide to use them as target practice instead. Anakin sneaks Leia a gun while he decides to deal with a stormtrooper. My boys need some practice killing Aqualayans. You're too slow. Starkiller the Hedgehog. A battle ensues. People getting shot, people getting run over, people getting stabbed.
People getting jacked in this movie.
After setting a nearby tank to explode and take out the jet stickers, as they're called, they make their escape. And so our comic ends with R2 saying that he knew everything would be alright. 3PO, you listening? Well, what do you know? Fainted! Seems like a really stupid thing to program into a robot designed for diplomatic dealings. This comic continues to be just okay. By this point, it feels like we're really into A New Hope, even if a lot of the details are different. Our heroes have their task and are having to fend off the Empire who's looking for them. The problem, as with last time, is that characterization is still very light. It's not aided by the amount of superfluous characters. Leia's two brothers are along for the ride, and you'll notice I haven't really mentioned them until now, because they have no impact. The same goes for White Sun, who has appeared in all 3 issues so far, but hasn't done anything that makes him a unique character. Darth Vader has been split into 2 characters for no reason. In fact, Darth Vader himself seems to serve little purpose when Prince Valorum is the actual Sith here. The one with the most characterization is Leia, who comes off rather uneven, since at some points she's stuck up and arrogant, and other times perfectly pleasant about everything. I do find it kind of funny how Leia and the droids have had their roles reversed. A New Hope was about the Empire looking for the droids, and the princess was just a secondary rescue goal for their heroes. But here the Empire is looking for Leia, and the droids are just an added bonus for their tactical knowledge for the heroes. But ultimately, they're not that necessary. It's really easy to see why they made the changes they did. Next time, we celebrate the anniversary of when I started doing comic reviews with, of course, Youngblood number 8. Yay. And welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. If you still don't know what's going on, watch the other reviews of this while we dig into issue 4 of The Star Wars. Reading from a trade, no cover analysis. We open where we left off last time, our heroes having narrowly escaped an Imperial platoon. Unfortunately, they must now endure a fate worse than death at the hands of stormtroopers. Children singing in the back seat. But the captain and his wife were very, very nice. Sample a 90s song onto it and you might have a hit. So they lived by the sea and Aqualay was always free. The new SpongeBob SquarePants theme is weird. They spot another Imperial patrol on Ostrich Back and decide to split up. Anakin taking the royal family one way, while Skywalker, Whitson, and the droids end up running right into the patrol. Officer? Have you seen any other transports in this area? We saw 2 heading south, going toward Amsel, looked like to me. Although, if you're interested, I've got these 2 droids with me. No thanks, we're not looking for any droids. The guy lets them go on their way, and Anakin reports over the communicator that he has 5 troopers approaching. But either the 5 turned around really quickly, or there's a different group of 5, since the 5 who let them go are now charging at them. Stop, Whitson. They're faster. They're faster? How slow is your stupid hover car if the chocobos can easily outrun it?
Put your helmet on. We'll be reaching speeds of 3.
So instead, they just take out guns and start shooting, managing to eliminate all but 1. Luke commandeers one of the sharp-toothed ostriches and gives chase, eventually catching up to the guy and slicing at him with his lightsaber. But they said the Jedi were That's right, the Jedi were extroverts. Now give me a hug! Anakin reports that he got 3, but 2 got away and are heading back their way, meaning there was definitely a second group, So why did the original one turn around? In a great display of lightsaber jousting, the two stormtroopers charge at Luke, who manages to decapitate both in one swing. The two groups reunite, with Anakin's shoulder having been injured. If he was clumsy enough to get hurt, maybe we ought to let him bleed to death. This is probably a bit deserved since Anakin punched her earlier, but at the same time, you're kinda low on troops to protect you, Princess Jackass. Maybe better to not treat the guy who could have been cut in half defending you like he was bantha dung. Also, why are you dressed like Yoli from Digimon Adventure 02? Anyway, Luke arrives. You missed two. I know, I couldn't. Don't let it happen again. Luke Skydick. At the Imperial Command Center, Prince Valorum and Darth Vader work to track our heroes down, realizing where they're going and planning an ambush. Back to our heroes, Gordon's Spaceport, a pleasant hive of cleanliness and heroism. Luke and Whitson head into town to try to meet their contact, hoping he's still alive. Anakin stays behind with the royal family. Once in town, they of course do what any good fantasy campaign does, even if it is in space, and head to a bar for information. Yep, it's the Cantina, where we see a very eclectic group of aliens everywhere, possibly even more so than in the original scene, although this rat monkey thing is still around. Oh, but of course, that's not the only thing they keep in this scene, as Luke is pushed by an alien that isn't speaking English. His compatriot, however, is. He doesn't like you. He's jealous of your beard. I don't like you either, and that's why we stopped dating, okay? I'm sorry. Don't insult us! How dare you apologize to me? I want witty banter, damn it! You just watch yourself. We're wanted men. I have the death sentence on 12 systems. Admittedly, they're over parking violations, but it's not my fault the laws are so messed up. We'll be careful then. You'll be dead! Oh, then they don't have to be careful. Everybody wins! You know, I bet this whole thing is just because they want Luke's sweet poncho. Anyway, Luke swings his lightsaber around, cutting one guy in half, slicing off another dude's head, and disarming Mr. Wanted Men. Jeez, I'm not even sure that guy who got cut in half was even involved. He was probably just going up to the bar for a drink. Speaking of, Whitson, give the bartender something to keep it quiet. Right. Whitson, what the hell? What? Luke senses something and walks off, eventually running into this guy. And who might this green fellow be? Han Solo! Always mysterious. Damn right he's mysterious! That's Swamp Thing! There isn't much about Han in the behind-the-scenes bits at the end, only saying that the original Star Wars screenplay described him as a huge green monster, so it's entirely possible that the similarity to Swamp Thing was deliberate homage. Luke Skywalker, you old stardog! Hey, careful there, Solo. Given the naming conventions of this universe, it's entirely plausible that there's someone out there named Stardog. Whitson goes to signal the others while Luke and Han get off the streets, reuniting also with Kane Starkiller, who had previously been said to be meeting up with Han back in the second issue. You are the Starkiller. I'm afraid Poe Dameron has to lead his squadron against you now. In this version, he looks like Starfire. My friend, you've raised your son well. He does you credit. He's an abject failure who needs me to mop up his mistakes. You should be proud. Luke insists that Anakin is changing, though there really isn't much evidence of that. His initial personality was just kinda horny and prone to punching princesses, but now he apologizes for getting injured during a fight? And that equals character development? Then again, according to Mr. Wanted Men, apologies are insults. Anyway, Han says enough chit-chat. Whitson has called the others. We have a kingdom to restore and an empire to destroy. Just like old times. Always seemed odd to me that we kept reestablishing and toppling the same kingdoms and empires, but hey, it was damn fun. Later, everyone is united, including some new faces who are also opposing the Empire. Whitson, why don't you take the androids into the other room for a game of chess? I'm sure they'd enjoy it. Chess? Are you kidding? R2 here doubles as like 12 consoles. Say hello to the Retron 12, kids! While this meeting is taking place, we also keep cutting to the Empire torturing some prisoners for interrogation. The scene exists only to remind us that the Empire are the bad guys. During the meeting, the other Resistance members, which includes a Proto-Rhodian, report that their efforts are for naught. The Empire keeps weakening their forces, and their own attacks against the Empire have been fruitless. Luke and Han say that it's because the Space Fortress is the real power behind the Empire's activities on Aquilay. Thus, they need to coordinate their efforts in attacking it, too. do. They're going to proceed with the plan of getting the royal family out of harm's way, posing as the crew of a freighter. The two children, however, can't really pose as crew, so instead the plan is to stuff them inside two power cells in suspended animation. However, there's a problem. The batteries needed to power their suspended animation are in short supply, and they were only able to acquire one. One of the resistance leaders makes it clear that whichever boy stays will be found and killed. Whitson suggests they lobotomize R2 for his energy pack. Did I mention that the Retron 12 can play PSP games too? I'm invaluable to you guys! Luke says R2's energy pack isn't compatible, so Kane has one suggestion: use the power pack for his cyborg systems. And he rips open his shirt to reveal his electronics still sparking and smoking. Wow, that shirt is really good about keeping in all the damage. Screw using duct tape to seal things, just use a shirt! He pulls out the energy pack despite Anakin's protest that it will kill him. And he collapses. Trust my judgment, son. You mean that same judgment that got you to kill yourself just now instead of talking about it with us first? And so Kane dies. We must now give him a Jedi Bendu funeral. You're gonna start a funeral pyre? What? No. In this version, we eat him. The princess conveys her condolences to Anakin. It had to be. Now he flows with the force of others, as do his bowels. They flow freely. The kids are put in hibernation and the packs are strapped to Anakin and Whitson's backs. Oh yeah, this is totally inconspicuous, guys. Great plan. The princess once again tries to engage Anakin. I just wanted to say, enough! I'll be fine. Keep your mind on the mission.
You and your stupid thoughtfulness can go to hell.
And so our comic ends with our heroes detailing all the things they have to do on this little trip. We have to board the freighter and get past the stormtroopers and find the secret agents of the Chrome Company and evade the Empire's starfighters and deliver the princess to Ofuchi so she can lead her people's revolt against the Empire. And worst of all, the prom's tomorrow! This issue is a whole lot of meh. Not terrible, but once again we see a few things that were wisely cut or changed. Despite what the comic is claiming, I don't really see that much, if any, development for Anakin. He was humble enough to Luke before, and since we didn't see the fight between him and the stormtroopers, we don't know how he acted that was so different than before. The dialogue between Anakin and the princess feels less like banter and more like two people who were acting like dicks at the worst times. And of course, we now have Swamp Solo along, adding yet another character to the group. Don't get me wrong, he's a welcome addition in that he brings a new visual element to the group, but one more character means one less developed character, not helped by the fact that he's introduced at what is essentially the halfway point of the story. Still, good to see the cantina scene mostly intact, even though its purpose has been removed. After all, we've already seen that Luke is a skilled fighter, and we know what the lightsabers can do. So why did we need him dealing with a bunch of rowdy bar customers? Anakin losing his father is pretty pointless, since it's not like he dwells that long on his death, nor does it seem to change his attitude in any meaningful way. The artwork remains gorgeous, though, and keeping the cantina scene at least lets us finally see a larger degree of aliens in this universe. Next time, back to a Patreon-sponsored review of an episode of the Spectacular Spider-Man cartoon. Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. The force of others compels us to dig into the Star Wars number 5. Normally, I don't talk about the covers when I'm reading from a trade. As a reminder, I do that because a comic's cover is usually meant to entice a reader to pick up the individual issue by being a miniature preview of the contents, whether it be abstract artwork or a scene depicted in the story. Or just a guy standing in a void looking menacing, but that's neither here nor there. Trades have their own covers, sometimes taken from an individual issue, and furthermore, the contents of trades may have been altered from the individual issue in one way or another. And since the cover of a trade doesn't necessarily have as large an impact on buying a book like it does for individual issues, I decide not to review that individual issue's cover if I'm reviewing it from a trade. However, this episode is running a bit short, so might as well, especially since this cover is friggin' gorgeous, done by artist Nick Runge. All the individual The Star Wars issues are done in a style reminiscent of Drew Struzan's artwork for Star Wars posters. This one in particular is awesome, from the gradual darkening of the light from top to bottom, a romantic scene on top, the bottom with a dynamic fight scene against stormtroopers, while also reminding us that yes, this is in space, thanks to these flying arrowheads zipping across the page at an angle. Just great stuff. We open at Gordon's spaceport on Aquilay, where the red zone is for loading and unloading only. Unless you're an alien who doesn't see that color, in which case it's the white zone. Swamp Solo is worried.
They're changing the boarding procedures. I don't like it.
Oh, come on. Unlike the rest of us, you're not even wearing any shoes to take off. Luke hands over his info to a guard, our identification officer.
I don't need to see your identification.
You don't? But what about my droids?
Those aren't the droids we're looking for.
Should we just move along?
Move along. Move along.
You're not going anywhere! Where are your component receipts? Man, the IRS is getting really annoying with tracking expense deductions. However, Luke is already on hand with that receipt, which comes in the form of a floppy disk, it would seem. Or possibly a technical machine from Pokemon. Anyway, they get through security. Anakin, though, is a bit worried. I don't like the feel of this. You're carrying around an unconscious child in a metal container strapped to your back, Annie. How the hell would any of this feel good? Also, I'm just curious if that was the early version of, I've got a bad feeling about this. Anyway, Anakin thinks he senses a Knight of the Sith, though Luke is uncertain. However, as they approach their ship, there seem to be less and less people around, confirming for them that something is off. Luke and Han go ahead to check things out, discovering Prince Valorum in the captain's chair. Welcome, gentlemen. You must have had a difficult journey.
Have a seat. Game of Thrones is about to start.
Stormtroopers come out to attack them, but the bridge is soon sealed off. Han tries to attack Valorum with his lightsaber, but Valorum just telekinetically pulls the saber from his hand. General, please explain to your soldier that the rest of your party is at my mercy.
I will decide the color of the decorations. There will be no cheap booze at this party. Only wine coolers.
Hey, check it out. They forgot to key out the green screen in the background. Anyway, the two are put in shackles and led away with instructions to not put them in the same cell as the others. Fortunately, for some reason, R2 and 3PO are still free and are ready to assist in their escape. And by that, I mean they just walk behind them as Luke and Han leap up into the air and somehow free themselves from their restraints. I don't know, it seems to imply that they break free by just shoving the manacles into the overhead lights, which either have so much juice flowing through them that they can easily be overloaded like this, or the ceilings have some kind of electric fence on them. And yeah, either way, the implication is that they overload the electronics of the manacles, which suggests that the modern-day tech of regular handcuffs is superior to these.
Just because it's futuristic doesn't mean it's practical.
But yeah, they of course escape and soon break the others free of their own cell. Well, now here's a chance for the droids to be useful. R2 can hack into the systems and disable them. Or Luke can throw a stormtrooper into the bars, which somehow turns them off. Did the Empire just buy all their tech from Radio Shack clearance sales? The storage units containing the kids were taken away, although they don't think the Empire knows about the kids inside of them. As such, Anakin and Whitson head out to rescue them, while the others head to an escape hatch to secure that. We finally get the droids to do something useful, 3PO being the one to open the hatch for them. Congratulations, guys! You've justified being in the plot for a few more pages! Anakin and Whitson find the storage pods, but are cornered by some stormtroopers. Anakin might have a way for them to get out. I picked up a neurostunner back there, but I'm not sure if it's ethical to— Use it! Use it now! But I don't want the name Anakin to ever be associated with something rash and unethical. Also, by their own admission, it's a stun device. What's unethical about that? But yeah, he tosses it and it disables the stormtroopers. Training is over, Anakin. The Empire cares nothing for Jedi Bendu ways. And yes, that means that we have to stun them. Damn our souls to hell for that! Unfortunately, it seems 3PO couldn't get the door open very much since Han Solo has to hold it up. They need to escape quickly since the Empire plans to gas the ship, but fortunately everyone manages to get through, Han finally letting the door go, and crushing a stormtrooper in the process. Ooh, jeez, check out the crunch sound effect. Bet it sounded like a metric ton of celery put in a hydraulic press. I don't think a Wilhelm scream would quite do that justice. The group head towards the nearest part of the spaceport, the military section, and quickly locate a ship they can use to escape, which you might recognize as the Tantive 4 rebel ship from the beginning of A New Hope. Yeah, in case you didn't know, originally this ship was gonna be the Millennium Falcon. During pre-production, however, the TV show Space 1999 came out with a prominent ship featuring a similar design, so they decided to build the Falcon we're all familiar with. Our heroes settle in, since they should be fast enough to get away from any Empire ships in pursuit. Everyone should get some rest. Have 3PO take the controls. Oh good, the robot that couldn't even get a door to open properly is gonna be flying the ship. I eagerly await him turning the ship around and landing back in the same spot entirely by accident. Anakin suggests they put the kids into an escape pod for their safety. Couldn't we let my brothers out now? It's better this way. Trust me, Princess, little kids and Star Wars rarely make a good combination. Leia asks Anakin to stay with her for a moment. I wanted to thank you. I think I love you. Aw, isn't that sweet? It was love at first punch. No, seriously, what the hell? Like, aside from the fact that these two have known each other for like maybe 2 days tops, she has been nothing but angry and pissed off at him every step along the way, and he hasn't exactly reciprocated. Hell, look at his expression as she's saying she friggin' loves him. Even he is utterly confused by what she's saying. And again, the first time they met, he punched her just for the sake of expediency. Is this one of those stupid things they say to little kids, that expressions of asshole behavior by little boys is just their way of saying they like them? Is that why Leia has those pigtails? Also, screw the idea of violence among little kids as a sign of affection. That is dumb. Hell, Anakin agrees with me. What is this silly talk of love? Stop acting like a child and start behaving like a queen. Well, in the Star Wars tradition of Leia's family, that means putting on clown makeup and silly headdresses. Although, given a previous issue, she's got the headdress thing down already. You belong to the people of Aqualay! They have the receipt! Oh, I hate you! The sooner we're on Ofuchi, the better! Just as well, Leia. Given previous issues of this comic, he'd probably just cheat on you with a redhead. 3PO detects some hostile fighters on an intercept course, and Luke hopes they can lose them in the nearby Yavin star system. Later, Whitson goes to talk to Luke in his quarters and asks what his deal is with the princess. We're in love. She loves me, and I just realized I love her. I am face-palming with the Infinity Gauntlet, Anakin. That is where we are now. Whitson points out that they're asking for trouble just because of their respective positions. I say they're asking for trouble because they're assholes to each other and they haven't been on a single date. For crying out loud, 50s romance comics have longer courtship time than this. And those comics usually have people proposing on the first date. Anyway, the Empire's attack is underway, forcing Anakin and Whitson to man the ship's guns. I count 3 Hunter destroyers, but they may be hiding their numbers. My god! It's Sand People! They always fly Hunter destroyers single file to hide their numbers! Turn the ship around. Let's face them. And then turn the ship back around again to face them because they're actually in fighters and will be flying in circles all around us. Anakin readies his gun port. The AT-AT cannon is full power. They're gonna shoot the Martians from Mars attacks at the Empire? Also, nice grammar. The cannon is full power. Luke orders them to hold for a signal before firing, maneuvering the ship for the best position. And indeed, we see that these are a different form of TIE fighters. Not too different, although their wings seem to be partially transparent. And so our comic ends with Anakin demanding the right to fire since the ship is getting blasted to bits. And yeah, that's the end of this issue. just out of nowhere in the middle of a fight. You know, this comic had the first encounter of our heroes with a main villain, an action-packed escape from their captors, cool spaceships flying around, the beginnings of romance, and some more space combat. Yet it feels like it barely got started. For that reason, and many others, this comic kinda sucks. As always, the artwork is the best part, not just for how realistic everyone is drawn, but the artist definitely has a sense of good cinematography in how shots are framed, really showing off some exciting stuff. The image of Tantive 4 busting out of the spaceport in particular comes to mind, and the characters feel properly dynamic when they need to be. The problem, of course, is all in the writing. Like I stated, it barely feels like anything happened, despite the fact that a lot happened. Now, some will probably say, well, yeah, this is the first draft of Star Wars, and they obviously cut and revised stuff in the finished product for very good reasons. The problem, of course, is that transposing that same script in comic form doesn't fix those issues, it just trades out one medium for another and kinda makes it worse. Reading ahead a bit, there's a better moment where we could have a cliffhanger ending for this issue, but because of the arbitrary need to include pretty much everything from this script, we have this kinda sorta non-cliffhanger ending the story. Anakin and Leia just falling in love out of nowhere is ridiculous. Say what you will about what happened between Anakin and Padme in Attack of the Clones, at least the sand discussion is something before they declare they love each other. And of course, there are way too many characters. They at least put the little kids inside of cans so they're not just running around during the space battles, but aside from some additional muscle and visual appeal, Han Solo doesn't really add anything. The droids seem practically useless, or at least R2 is, since it's 3PO who does the technical stuff in this version, and Whitson is a glorified extra. Regardless, it is still fun to see how different and yet similar so much of this is, and where things got switched around and used differently. And for those of you upset that this episode was so short, don't worry. I just like to have some short ones after really big ones like Event Comics Month. Or with next time, as we're back with Patreon-sponsored reviews with a look at a few issues of all-new Ghost Rider. Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Time once again to dig into the Star Wars and see what else was rightfully cut and revised from A New Hope. I would have worn the cloak that I normally do when I do the Star Wars reviews, but I look like a linebacker with that thing over the jacket. Reading from a trade, so normally I don't look at the cover, but gotta love this one. This isn't some artistic flair or metaphor. Anakin is outside the ship without a spacesuit, tethered by a long rope, and TIE fighters are shooting at him as he tries to dodge the lasers. Oh sure, people make fun of Leia flying through space with the Force, but here's Anakin Starkiller not only flying through space, but evading enemy ships straight from how the original Star Wars intended things to go. This is how the Force works. When last we left off, Luke Skywalker was insisting that Anakin not start shooting at the TIE fighters despite them pummeling the hell out of them, wanting him to wait for his signal. Finally impatient with that, Anakin opens fire, taking out one. Much like Luke in A New Hope, he happily proclaims his success to his friend, only with this quasi-realistic artwork, his face is now terrifying. Do you like womp rats? Luke repeats that he needs to wait for his signal on the next run, because they have limited power and he's an inexperienced moron who's wasting it with grandstanding. Unfortunately, he's got an even worse problem as the shields around where Anakin is located start weakening, and the TIE fighters concentrate their fire there, blowing a hole out into space. Can't breathe. I can talk, though. Weird. R2, go help Starkiller. How? I'm just a freaking astromech Wait a second. Do I have jets in this version of the story too? Is that why they was in the prequels? I keep calling them TIE fighters for simplicity, but they're actually called Hunter-Destroyers, which, yeah, it's kind of generic, but not terrible. It just really goes to show how stuff like the actual name for these ships has become so iconic and recognizable that it's hard to call them anything different. Anyway, with several more fighters coming in, Luke orders them into an asteroid belt. It's too dense to pass through. The ship won't make it. Sir, the odds of successfully navigating an asteroid field are approximately 3,720 to 1. Oh, they are? Well, then we better avoid that then. Thanks for telling me the odds. Yeah, it's been said that Star Wars was originally just such a huge movie that they split it into 3 films, which might make one think that's what's going on with the asteroid chase from Empire, but that's not entirely accurate. Just some aspects got pushed into other movies to condense things and make more sense for a more cohesive narrative. Anyway, Whitson is in his upside-down turret and trying to blast some TIE fighters since they're going after Anakin, which seems like a bit of a waste of time since, you know, he's just floating in the vacuum of space. Although, this is Star Wars, it could be they expect him to pull out his lightsaber and try to commandeer one of the fighters. R2 will not be flying out on jets to get him, but rather send out a tether line to him after one that's already attached to him gets zapped by the TIE fighters. Anakin, I'll shoot you a new line! Grab on! It's a good thing robots don't need air to talk in space! He's pulled back in and the hull breach sealed so Anakin can actually breathe again. They enter the field and their shields are nearly lost already, so we can see them sustaining hull breaches from some of the smaller asteroids. Luke, realizing they might need to abandon ship, orders Whitson away from his turret. He goes and helps Anakin as he keeps trying to say something to Leia, who's also nearby. As he's let off, R2 takes Leia's hand with his little claw arm thing, which is kind of weird when you realize how short he is compared to Leia, so if he's able to grab her like that, she is really hunched over. Anakin almost suffocated, but ever since I saved him, he keeps repeating your name. It was something like, man, Leia made this look so easy. Oh yeah, him saying her name. Did you forget about that? How these two have known each other for, like, a day or two, but are now madly in love with each other? Anyway, good news! It looks like the pursuing TIE fighters all get blowed up thanks to asteroids. Bad news! The ship has sustained heavy damage, and a complete systems failure is imminent. So yeah, time to abandon ship. The nearest planet is Yavin in the Forbidden Systems, so they redirect the ship towards it while getting everybody into escape pods. R2 goes with Anakin, Whitson with Leia, Han Solo with 3PO, and Luke goes with the storage pods that have Leia's brothers in them. The pods eject, but not Whitson and Leia's, since their power suddenly dies out. Whitson leaves and seals up the escape pod for her, with only one way to eject it. Hit the control panel with a stick. This is why Whitson was fired from his last IT job. The pod ejects, and the others detect that indeed only one life form is aboard. Goodbye, Whitson. May the force of others be with you. Well, right now he'd prefer that to the force of an exploding spaceship. The pods soon land on the forest moon of Yavin, and Luke soon meets up with Han and 3PO. This is dangerous country. Anakin will have to find Leia, and quick. I see that Yavin's tourism campaign has been a dismal failure. What happened to Captain Whitson? He sacrificed himself to save the princess. A courageous act that I will never forget. Would have been really awkward if it turned out Leia had been the one to force the pod's ejection to save Whitson. Then again, Whitson's barely been a character so far, so it's not like we're losing someone critical to all this. Anakin, meanwhile, apparently fell out of his pod and now has a giant spider crawling on top of him. However, he wakes up and just kind of flings it away. Not even sure what he did here. Look at this panel. It looks like he just swept his arm and made it fly. Do not underestimate my power! But yeah, he's awake. I'm not dead yet. Well, duh! That spider was a chiropractor trying to fix your spine after the crash! Anakin helps R2 down, and he can detect Leia's pod relatively nearby. Back with the others, they wake up the kids from their storage pods. And then immediately back to Anakin. I guess putting this bit next to the previous scene with them would have been impossible. Just keep jumping back and forth really quickly. Anyway, Leia's pod is empty, and Anakin can tell that someone's gotten to her based on some tracks in the dirt. They start following the trail, and man, I've never really thought of this before, but R2 really needed some kind of jet propulsion, since otherwise trying to traverse any area of a pathless forest probably is going to pose some difficulty for something that can only scoot when it isn't rolling. While Luke's group spots a military base nearby that could belong to some hunters, Anakin spots something up ahead and tells R2 to stay put. If I don't return by 0200, find General Skywalker and come looking for me. Sounds good! Remind me what time it is again? I mean, we're on a completely different planet. Moving forward, Anakin spots a group of hunters who have captured what appear to be proto-Wookiees. Although it's probably not the Wookiees they were originally hunting here, because looking at them, they appear to be a group of bounty hunters. Specifically, those Vader had hired to hunt the Millennium Falcon in Empire Strikes Back. It's been like an hour since they escaped from Valorum and already they hired bounty hunters? Man, the Empire has like no confidence in their own forces. But yeah, they're like early versions of them. A gold-armored Boba Fett, a more brightly colored and shirtless Bosk, Dengar, Forlom, and one other dude who gets sliced immediately, and so I can't identify them. Point is, they've clearly got Leia, and Anakin decides to leap in to save her. Given his track record so far, that goes about as well as you would expect. Blasted back by a space bazooka. As they drive off, Proto Dengar gets ready to shoot the unconscious Anakin. However, in the scuffle, the Wookiees or whatever got released, so they attack him and knock him out. This guy, the strong silent type, picks up Anakin and they walk off. Back with our other heroes, they reach the encampment and its owner. Howdy, stranger. I'm Owen Lars of Bastine. What can I offer you? Do you like blue milk? Because I got lots of blue milk. So the Wookiees here are kind of a mixture of Wookiees and Ewoks, especially evident by their official greeting. Wooga! Well, either that or they all worship a warning siren. Back with our other heroes, Owen explains that the Wookiee tribe moved in about a year ago and it's been hell ever since. There are no cities nearby, just some scattered settlements and an Imperial outpost, but they've been no help, preferring to just be assholes and kill and plunder things. How far is the outpost from here and what class is it? How many support craft? 5 Leaguers. The outpost is very small. A class 2, only a dozen Star Raiders, I think. It's a good thing I know all this, random strangers who just showed up and probably want to piss off the heavily armed Imperials who will come and harass me and my wife afterwards. Ah, well, it'll probably be fine. What are they gonna do? Burn us down to skeletons? Back with Luke, I guess he's recovered enough that the Wookiees now want to fight him. Some big one tosses an axe at him, but he catches it in midair and is able to fight back with it. The Wookiee's stronger than him and shoves him aside, but he manages to grab a broken handle of a spear and stab the Wookiee with it. I don't think he kills him or anything, but the fight is enough to make the Wookiees happy, who provide him with his gear. And so our comic ends with him bowing as they all scream, "Malagobla, boo hey boo!" Man, the original version of Life Day was weird. This comic is okay. Certainly better than issue 5, but only because it felt like stuff was happening. This issue is pretty much all action. You've got the space battle, you've got the tension of Anakin being blown into space, the quick escape, the sacrifice of Whitson, the battle with the bounty hunters, and then the ending fight with the Wookiee. It's not anything deep, and there's a tiny bit of character development put in the relationship between Leia and Anakin, but otherwise this one's all about moving the characters forward into their next plight. When you break it down, not a lot has actually happened, but the momentum of everything going on makes it seem as if a lot of stuff is happening, and it was less boring. I do love, though, that we have discarded a character who was fairly unnecessary to the overall plot, only to add some more with the Wookiees, the bounty hunters, and Owen friggin' Lars. Obviously, it's possible that none of these are actually going to be major characters going forward, but if they weren't, why bother with Owen's presence at all when they could just have them run across the Imperial outpost? I know the Wookiees will be significant because, well, they're kind of the reason we have the Ewoks in Return of the Jedi at all. George Lucas's desire for a Vietnam War parallel in the film with a small, less technologically advanced force taking on a more Imperial, tech-heavy enemy. We'll see how that plays out whenever we come back to this series. Next time, however, we've got another Patreon-sponsored episode with the first 4 episodes of King of Braves Gao Gaigar. Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Back from my break, and it's the penultimate issue of The Star Wars, the comic based on one of George Lucas's original rough drafts for A New Hope. When we last left off, Luke, 3PO, and Han's Swamp Thing had met up with Owen Lars, who told them about a nearby Imperial outpost. Leia had been kidnapped by a group of bounty hunters, and Luke stabbed a Wookiee, which earned him the respect of the other Wookiees. Not for any deep cultural reasons or anything, the dude was just an asshole, and it was nice for them to see him get taken down a peg. Let's dig into The Star Wars, number 7, as we close in on finishing this thing. Reading from a trade, so no looking at the cover. We open with Luke and Han preparing to leave on some special hovercrafts provided for them by Lars. Remember what I said, 3PO. There are just as many good generic waxing agents as there are the name brand stuff. 3PO is being left in charge of protecting the two kids while he and Han look for Leia and Anakin. Good call. I can't think of anyone better equipped to defend children from the ruthless Empire than the walking, talking Google Translate. Owen says that the Imperial patrols don't usually come out this far, so the kids should be fine. The two head out on their little floating platforms. Lars, your kindness will surely be rewarded. Yeah, I definitely can't see anything bad happening to Owen and... I'm pretty sure that was an unrelated accident. This is why you don't boil blue milk. Meanwhile, at the Wookiee camp, the tribe is dancing around a campfire for some reason. Anakin and R2 decide to make a discreet exit, but they're met by this wide-eyed fellow. Oh no! The fiercest Wookiee! Right, sure. The face of fierce, everyone. Points to the comic for somehow conveying a terrible, bug-eyed, unconvincing alien mask that probably would have been in the film if the budget had been lower. This is what happens when you can't hire the Jim Henson Company for your creature effects. Or what happens when you do get them, but they've been making just Muppets for too long.
It's time to face your maker on the Muppet Show tonight.
Anakin just wants to leave, but the Wookiee won't budge. I think he wants to be a friend. I am grateful to you and your people, but I must go. Facebook is just a cesspool of misinformation and bigotry these days, and I don't want any more friends there. The two walk off to go find Leia, but the Wookiee follows behind them. They soon meet back up with Han and Luke, who have found the bodies of the bounty hunters Luke killed earlier. You were followed. I know, he wouldn't stay. He's one of the ones I saved, but I can't understand a word he says. He just keeps talking about NFTs and my mind spaces out. And it seems Han Solo, like his true movie counterpart, can speak Wookiee. He is Chewbacca, son of Ozatuk, prince of the Sawas. A very powerful Wookiee tribe. It seems they've made Starkiller a god. Don't be too excited by that. Specifically, you're the god of string beans. They're trying to fill out some empty slots in their pantheon. Later, they locate the Imperial outpost. While the Wookiees have harassed them several times now, the outpost is too heavily fortified and well-armed to do anything more. Luke thinks they might be able to organize the Wookiees into a more effective fighting force. They call up the kids to see how they're doing. Great, General! I caught a thumper! A big one!
Again! It is the legend.
The other kid is out collecting berries or something with Owen and Beru. However, after the transmission ends, the stormtroopers bust in. The thumper tries to defend the kid, but it gets sliced in half. If this had been the movie, the sequel would have basically been this kid going John Wick on the Empire over this. Soon, Luke is telling the Wookiees his plan. I guess maybe Han acting as a translator? And they begin their assault, using the Wookiees as a diversion to lure Imperial tanks out before smashing them with big rocks. As Luke notes, the earlier attacks by the Wookiees have worked to their advantage. The Imperials are so used to chasing them off that they've grown sloppy and aren't even using more advanced detection systems. Side note though, the spelling of Wookiees includes an extra E in there for some reason. So maybe I should be pronouncing it Wookie-S. And I thought having 3 Y's in Kashyyyk was excessive. Because poor literacy is a way to make sci-fi names. Anyway, they've captured 4 tanks and used them in a direct assault, quickly swarming the place, as we see in this nifty 2-page spread. One of the original inspirations for Star Wars was, of course, politics of the day. Lucas has said as much, and in this case, the Vietnam War. The sequence is basically meant to be the centerpiece of the movie. A less technologically advanced force living in a jungle managing to overpower and fight off an advanced military system invading it. The allegory got a bit lost when it eventually resurfaced in Return of the Jedi because the Ewoks were friggin' teddy bears, so it came off as kinda goofy. It works a little better here with a bunch of what is essentially Yetis doing the job, though slightly undermined in that they needed another technologically advanced military person, Luke, to do the strategy and thinking for them. Although I think the bigger issue is that I don't see these guys singing Yub Nub, so what's even the point? Our heroes quickly take the base, which is equipped with a squadron of what are essentially Y-Wing fighters. Leia's been taken back to Aqualay, so Luke plans to head back there to rescue her. I'm not gonna stop you, Anakin, but it's a reckless move. You wouldn't see me jumping into a fighter to go on some half-baked rescue mission of my friends. Han informs Luke that they've lost contact with the kids and the Larses. That is an awkward family name to pluralize. So they dispatch Chewbacca and 2 of his warriors to find out what's going on. Luke's bigger plan is to use the Y-Wings to stage an assault on the space fortress, though he doesn't have pilots. His plan is to train the Wookiees to pilot them. So I guess we've had it all wrong. This is actually an early draft of Battlefield Earth. Anakin flies out in the Y-Wing, Sky Raider, and in disguise, hoping that'll help the rescue mission. We'll bring Leia back even if we must sacrifice ourselves like the noble Whitson. I doubt that'll be necessary. You had a lot more character development than he did. On board the space fortress, Leia is being held in restraints as Darth Vader speaks to her.
I pray you have been treated honorably, Princess Leia. I am your servant, Darth Vader.
Oh good, my waiter's finally here. Look, I appreciate the yoga machine, but I am dying for some pasta here. Naturally, this is all just mockery as they prepare to bring in some doctors to torture her until she acquiesces to their demands. In the meantime, electrocution, wherein Vader throws back his head and laughs like this. It's the little things that are so amusing about this early weirdness. Can you think of a single moment in the original trilogy where Vader laughed? I'm not questioning it. Don't make a comment saying something like, well, of course he didn't laugh. He's a tragic figure of blah, 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 blah. I mean, like, it's the kind of thing you don't really think about, but seeing it here, you really recognize that part of his character, that even in moments of victory, he never even lightly chuckles or a single heh. And thus seeing a version of Vader laughing like this is just so weird. Anyway, the tank that was carrying the Larses and kids is soon overrun by the Wookiees, who get 3PO up to speed. Apparently, he and his friends are rescuing us. The Skywalker is teaching them how to fly like birds, and the Starkiller God is attacking a moon to rescue a princess. Oh, Maker, and the worst part is that the prom's tomorrow! And apparently the Starship training is going pretty well. The Y-Wings apparently have big enough control rooms for Chewbacca, Luke, and Han Solo to all hang out in comfortably. Place looks bigger than my office. Anyway, the rough flying is doing a number on Han Solo's stomach. There's no time to be sick, Solo. We have to rack up a lot more orbital training. Today. Man, we thought the time compression in Last Jedi was kind of wonky. How long is this training taking? Yavin was like less than a day out from where they were escaping from, but it seems like the training is going to take multiple days, and yet nobody in the Empire is curious about what's happening here? And indeed, when Anakin arrives at the space fortress, the guy there asks what the hell's going on at Yavin because they've lost contact with them. Anakin bluffs his way out of the conversation and has R2 hook up to the station's computer to find Leia. They head to the detention area, with Anakin requiring an escort to go deeper in. The Methusians just beat the PDRs again. They should be in another league. They should be in another system. Is it weird that we've seen a lot of different aspects of cultures and places and ideas in Star Wars, but none of the movies have ever shown us space football? Anakin vanishes, and the stormtrooper he was talking to calls out an alert on this. And so our comic ends with Luke being informed that they've made contact with the underground on Aqualay, and they're ready to begin a coordinated attack with them. The Wookiees preparing to pilot the Y-Wings, after having painted them up in various tribal designs. Although hilariously to them, this is just the equivalent of drawing dicks on something. This issue is okay, though it's definitely feeling like we're rushing to the climax. The Wookiee attack on the base and them learning how to fly spaceships feels like the kind of thing that should take up at least a half hour of a film, but instead it's just handled over a few pages. While there isn't much in the way of character development or the like, that's only because we need to start putting the pieces in place for the big finale. Minor bit of padding that probably would have been cut from the film is the Imperials finding the kids. It ends up going nowhere since they're pretty much freed immediately after capture. It's still so weird to see the bare bones ideas of Star Wars related things, but everything's all twisted around and just not as good. And then the entire idea of the Wookiees getting trained in, like, an afternoon to pilot spaceships when they still think Anakin is a god because he bested one of their warriors in combat, it's just silly. Yet you've just kind of come to expect that kind of silliness from this version of events. Although let's face it, the finished version of Star Wars still had that kind of goofiness running through it at times. Next time, back to Patreon-sponsored reviews as we look at two side characters from Sonic in their own miniseries. Number 14. Fun with Spelling, from the Star Wars number 7 review. I make spelling errors occasionally, usually in the end credits. You guys love to point them out too. The truth is often just I made a typo and I'm so done with the episode that I just want to get it out and I decide not to look it over just because I want it uploaded as soon as possible. It's sloppy, certainly, and unprofessional. Hell, it happened in the 750th episode a few weeks ago, where I was thanking my fans Wordle-wide. I guess I was just trying to thank all my fans who play Wordle. And because I make those kind of mistakes, it's probably not good for me to throw stones in glass houses criticizing spelling. Especially when I'm wrong. In the Star Wars number 7, I made a side note about the spelling of Wookiees, pointing out how goofy it was for the comic to include an extra E in the name. I thought that the regular canonical spelling of Wookiee only had one E. No, it doesn't. The official spelling does indeed have the extra E, which I personally think is silly and excessive, but hey, it's a made-up word. Well, okay, all words are made up, but you get my point. Adding in extra letters but still pronouncing it as if that's not there is weird. It's like spelling Linkara with an extra A at the end, even though it changes nothing. But still, it's my mistake. I really should have noticed that when occasionally looking up stuff on Wikipedia, for crying out loud. Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Last week we said farewell to a comic that has been with us since the early days. An example of taking a ridiculous premise and making it fun and enjoyable despite some hiccups. Now let's say goodbye to a series that really needed that overhaul to make it fun and enjoyable. Now, of course, the obvious thing anyone can say about The Star Wars is, well, of course it's not very good. It's the first, or at least an early, draft. It's going to take a lot of rewrites and a lot of talent to make it into something as beloved as it's become. And hey, even when it became something more recognizable, Star Wars infamously had a terrible first edit, even with a better script. But it's still hard to imagine that anyone believed in this script enough to try to make it work, because it really doesn't. It's overflowing with characters, the emotional resonance isn't really there, and stuff like Anakin's dad dying not being dwelled on, or Whitson's sacrifice being empty since we know nothing about him. We only care because in a general sense we don't like killers and fascists. It's not so terrible as to be awful, but it isn't anything special. US 1 last week had personality to most of its characters, goofiness that fully embraced how silly the whole premise was to begin with. I have this strange sense that the battle between two big rigs playing bumper cars in space will be more exciting than the space battles here. But hey, that's just why this all got revised into the Star Wars we love and love again and hate again today. It's a complicated relationship. Point is, this is the finale of The Star Wars, so where did we leave off? After winning the respect of the bug-eyed Wookiees, Anakin Starkiller reunites with Luke Skywalker and Swamp Thing Han Solo. Thanks to the help of the Wookiees, they take over an Imperial outpost. With a fleet of proto-Y-Wings at their command, Luke plans to organize an assault on the Empire's space fortress. Piloted by Wookiees, because I guess George Lucas predicted Battlefield Earth. On the space fortress, Princess Leia has been captured and is being tortured by Darth Vader. Anakin, who has fallen in love with Leia after knowing her for like a day, takes R2 on a rescue mission for the princess. Him slipping away from a stormtrooper while talking to him about space football has alerted the guards to his presence. So let's dig into the final issue of The Star Wars, and may the force of others be with us. Reading from a trade, so no real analysis of the cover, save for the fact that I like it. Though why Anakin is making kissy faces at his lightsaber is anyone's guess. We open with stormtroopers patrolling the detention area looking for Anakin. They find nothing, but Anakin finds them, slowly picking off a couple stragglers, including punching one across the face to knock him out.
Ow, my mask!
Neither helmet fits. Luke was right. I do have a swelled head. Today, the role of Anakin Starkiller will be played by Dib from Invader Zim. All kidding aside, good line. And hey, does that mean that the reason Luke couldn't see out of the helmet in the original movie was just because it didn't fit him? Watching on the security monitors are Darth Vader and Prince Valorum. And I see you have Skywalker's apprentice on the run.
Yes, we've just trapped your friend.
Look, we just met the one time at someone else's party. Stop making it sound like I cheated on you.
Watch us accomplish what you, the great Sith, found to be impossible.
Okay, this is a good example of the writing issues. When Vader and Valorum met for the first time, Vader was deferential and respectful, but now suddenly he's all,
God, the Sith suck! This is why my forces are awesome!
I just feel like there's a scene missing. Anyway, Anakin is running through the halls without a helmet, which of course is drawing more attention to himself than just waiting in the same spot in the walls to try to find someone with a helmet his size.
Stop, traitor!
No. That's not how you do it. This is the energy you need.
Traitor!
Or, if you're really pissed...
Traitor!
A bulkhead closes, blocking Anakin's escape. As such, he turns, closes his eyes, no doubt letting the Force flow through him, and he slaughters the stormtroopers with ease. Unrealistic Mary Sue character! Why do they let him get away with this? I don't know how anyone can fight in these tin cans. Well, they probably have them attached to their body with something better than Scotch tape. Although the armor being made of tin would explain how stormtrooper armor sucks so much. Anyway, another bulkhead falls and they gas him, knocking him unconscious. Well, now we really know why this script needed to be changed. This is some of the most competency we've ever seen in Star Wars villains.
You see, Valorum,
whatever.
Gas at last. I don't know why the Emperor bothered to request your services.
Ha ha! Special guest appearance by Phil Ken 7.
Still, you may be useful. Take the Jedi to the special interrogation section, and use your Sith skills to find out his plans.
As you wish, Darth.
You realize that zapping him with lightning isn't really that impressive, right? A car battery does the same thing for all intents and purposes.
Back over to the assault force of Wookiees, the Proto-Y-Wings are actually bigger ships, not fighters as much as light attack craft. Luke is coordinating with the rebels on Aqualay to stage simultaneous attacks at the same time as the assault on the space fortress. It's a nice touch, shows that it's not just the destruction of the space fortress that will liberate the planet. Also love this one dude with the black mask covering half his face, leaving his huge, distinctive mustache exposed.
There, sure glad I don't look stupid in this.
Actually, that clip is a bit unfair. In this panel, he kinda looks cool as a villain, but this is one of the good guys and yet looks kind of scary like that, and I question the function of the mask if it's for hiding his identity. Speaking of unnecessary masks, we cut back to the space fortress, where Valorum removes his and reveals absolutely no scarring, damage to his face or mouth, nothing. Look, some of us recognize that the pandemic is not really over, and wearing masks helps immunocompromise people, and helps prevent me from getting sick. Anakin is attached to a torture chair. You were insane to come here. Why? For her? Oh sure, I'm captured, I find out my head is literally too big, and now I'm being lectured about my choice in girlfriends. Can you not see I'm having a crappy enough day here, Valorum? You're a great warrior, but you're a greater fool. This is a place for androids. No codes, no honor. Wait, is everyone in the Empire an android? Is that the big twist here? Our ways are useless here.
Why couldn't you have stayed away? We can't lift rocks here! There are no rocks to lift!
Vader enters with Governor Hodak, who's in charge of the system.
We've come here to inform him of his fate.
Wait, why the hell did you send me down here if you were just going to come in to interrupt it?
For all the trouble he's caused us, this Jedi doesn't seem like much. Does he, Governor Hodak? You should be impressed with this technological terror we've constructed. The power of the force of others is nothing compared to the ability to take over a planet.
I'm pretty sure we did this bit a few episodes ago already.
Oh please, nobody remembers that.
Your easy capture and public imprisonment should end the Jedi myth once and for all. Nobody will believe that the Jedi came from the thigh of Zeus anymore.
Prince Valorum, the Sith may be next. Just thought I'd say that right before I left you alone with the prisoner.
And yeah, Hodak orders him to take Anakin back to Alderaan for his execution. My only regret is that I won't be there myself. Lovely planet Alderaan. I see a bright future for it in this franchise. The Space Fortress detects the approaching Y-Wings and realizes they don't have any clearance codes, so they go to battle stations. In the hangar bay, as the prisoner transport is being refueled, Valorum suddenly frees Anakin and tosses him a lightsaber.
Jedi and Sith must settle this honorably, here and now!
Ah yes, one of the things that carried over into the real franchise, the honor of the Sith. No, of course, this was just so they could both attack and kill the guards. So yeah, thanks to Vader's sudden assholeness towards the Sith, Valorum has switched sides, even saying they need to fight the forces of tyranny.
Your technique needs work, Starkiller. Watch me and learn! Make really big swinging motions and then jump in the air like we were doing a Matrix parody like this.
What will you teach me? Cruelty? A Sith murdered my brother.
Didn't he pay with his life?
Yeah, but without a tip, the cheap bastard. Valorum wants them to make a run for it, but Anakin says he's not leaving without Leia.
Impossible! There are traps everywhere! You're mad!
Is this the human condition of madness, leader? It is.
It's love. By the way, thanks for freeing me.
Love? Now I remember why our clans have fought for 1,000 years. Geez, everything would be better if the Jedi weren't allowed to fall in love.
The Y-Wing attack on the Space Fortress commences while Valorum, for some reason, comes along to help Anakin. He tricks some guards before slicing them down. Deception is still your way, Valorum.
I seem to remember somebody in disguise. Our ways are not so different.
Okay, but my disguise lasted for all of 0 seconds. The Jedi Bendu way is failing towards success. They free Leia. Anakin? It's about time. Aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper? Apparently my head isn't. Valorum says they need to get moving. All the hallways are sealable and they're bound to know something's up by now. Is this garbage chute pressurized?
Yes, but it's going to be an awful ride.
Follow me! And he leaps in.
Well, I was going to say it's going to be an awful ride and then you hit the spikes at the bottom, but there you are.
They fall down into the garbage dump, but no weird tentacle monster like in the movie version. Still, Valorum notes that the door is powered shut and they need to find some way of turning off the power. Yuck! This is a fine place for a princess. Life with me can only get better. On the plus side, we're not brother and sister in this version. Outside the Space Fortress, the Y-Wings are being very successful, taking out a bunch of terminals. I presume they mean power terminals. Apparently R2 determined that if they destroy a relay center, it'll set off a massive chain reaction and destroy the fortress. And Chewbacca blows another one up. That Wookiee is turning out to be our best gunner. Great shot, Fuzzball! That was 1 in a million! While Vader and the Governor learn of the rebellion on the planet, they also discover our heroes in the waste disposal and activate the trash compactor.
This is not how I pictured my death.
Admittedly though, dying from pleasure during the orgy with the bikini models I rescued from a downed submarine was pretty unlikely, but hey, a guy can dream. Fortunately for them, though not for the poor Wookiees, one Y-Wing gets hit and it crashes into the relay center, knocking out the power for the trash compactor and allowing Valorum to, kick down the door. Look, I know he said that the doors were power sealed, but I kind of expected the metal doors to be like on a slider or something. That means it can't just be knocked down like the Kool-Aid Man just came crashing through. They meet up with R2, who has just been hanging around doing nothing, I guess.
The core power has exceeded the normal stress quotient by 0.8. The magnetic fusion pods have evaporated. There appears to be immediate danger. It's nice to see you too, old buddy. Not for me. I kinda switched sides and told them where to find you, and now I'm not gonna get paid.
While they head for an escape pod, Vader and the governor argue about whether to evacuate or stay and fight. However, the discussion proves to be pretty pointless because the bridge explodes. Don't worry, Vader. I'm sure now you'll get the cool robot suit. The fleet flies away from the exploding space fortress, but Han's worried about Anakin and Leia. Time to stop worrying about them. Anakin is a Jedi now, and Jedi are immune to explosions. Our heroes escape while Anakin and Leia make out. Of course, a visual representation of them banging. Sometime later in the Aqualay throne room, in the original draft, Chewbacca was getting a medal. Hell, even R2 and 3PO get medals. Who did these characters piss off between then and the final movie to get their medals taken? 3PO, R2, your service to Aqualay is greatly appreciated. You are designated A4. It's like 4 times the steak sauce. You will serve Anakin Starkiller, the new Lord Protector of Aqualay. Come, we must attach the ceremonial goofy wheel thing to your back now. I noticed no medal for Valorum, though, and so our comic ends with an ending crawl of all things, while everybody cheers. As word of the destruction of the space fortress spread, 1,000 new systems joined Queen Leia and the rebellion, causing a significant crack in the Great Wall of the Galactic Empire. But then Superman came along and fixed it with his wall repair vision. The acts of Skywalker and Starkiller once again sparked fear in the hearts of the greedy and the malevolent, and a new sense of liberty, not felt for 100 years, swept through the hearts of all. Well, except for all the space Nazis, they felt a lot of jail, death, and pain. But they were space Nazis, so who gives a damn? But our heroes' greatest adventure was yet to take place, the one which would be known as Saga of the Ofuchi. But somehow I don't think we'll be seeing that. This comic is not that great. Even now, after we've completed this miniseries and seen it all, I hesitate to say it sucks. It's just unbaked. Admittedly, even if we didn't know about what it would eventually become, I'd have a problem saying that it sucked, just that it wasn't that good. This issue in particular had a lot going on, not helped by the sudden face turn of Prince Valorum, who we know nothing about other than he's a Sith and the Sith are bad. Vader suddenly is pissed and genocidal at him for no reason. The mighty space fortress that helped conquer a planet being taken down by a bunch of Sasquatches who never rode a bicycle before, much less flew a spaceship until a day ago, and no real emotional resonance with any of the characters beyond, oh, the pretty guy and girl get together, yay! The action isn't terrible, and individually plenty of these plot points could work if they were properly built up or some stuff shifted around, as we saw in the movies. Naboo starfighters liberated to destroy a droid control ship. Ewoks defeating the Empire's forces on the ground, but not in space. A last-minute change of heart by the villain, etc. But in this form, it's all just fine. The narrative flows well, full of action and adventure, but there's no heart to it. Everyone's kind of bland, or there'll be some random aggression, like from Luke towards Anakin, or sudden declarations of love. The artwork remains its strongest feature. Very realistic-looking people that evoke the Star Wars aesthetic while being its own thing. Clearly a lot of work went into the design elements of the series, so that there's plenty familiar, but it's just different enough to be its own thing. All in all, the Star Wars was an interesting experiment, but I'd rather have more Star Wars what-ifs in the vein of the Infinity series. Next time, let's end out September with the continuation of another series, Godzilla, Kingdom of Monsters.
That coming
Poor kid, now he's one with the force of others. That's not how the force of others works! What about R2? We could lobotomize him and use his energy pack. It's not compatible. Damn it! If only we had gone to Tashi Station to pick up some power converters! Man, I can't wait for the eventual prequel movie where we learn the origin behind this Han Solo first getting that ship that was blown up in this story.
Now we'll see if your plan works.
It has to, or it's death for the princess, Anakin, and freedom! Oh, and death for the Wookiees who are piloting these things, but they don't really count as much. So when do you think we'll get the expanded universe explanation of the random stormtrooper Anakin stole his outfit from? Hello, my friends. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for notifications on new video releases. If you'd like to support future videos, you can check out my Patreon, buy merch from the store and via link in the description, or check out the t-shirts available from Teespring. Thanks for watching.